Woo! KJ Studios. I would be a liar if I didn't say this is intro 2.0 because I forgot to hit record the first round. But man, I am excited to talk to my brother in chief, James McClure, retired, now training manager, the guy I like to call the Airman's Airman, because man, servant leadership, it runs through the blood. And I'm honored because, it's just a testament that when we retire, we don't stop chiefing. And so without further ado, folks, James McClure, you there, brother?
I'm there, brother. What's going on, man?
Man, see, thanks for playing along. We had to do it twice. I tell you what, my leadership market value just hopefully, well, I guess it depends. It went up or down because at least someone would be like, man, you admit when you made a mistake.
No, it went up because you know what we always say in the Air Force, Semper Gumby, always flexible, and I think you flex perfect, brother.
Yeah, I had an interview with someone, and I said, I call it the natural dummying down with the promotions. They're like, what do you mean? I said, it's better as a chief that you know less of the grassroots stuff because then you don't micromanage. It's almost impossible for you to micromanage. At least for Kevin James, it was better because, you probably, you may have heard me tell folks, I said, I really believed I was always a tech sergeant at heart and mind. I just happened to get 3 more stripes. So, hey.
Well, my running joke always was I don't trust tech sergeants. You know why? Because I used to be one.
When you got shit done, right?
Exactly.
And sometimes we know how we got shit done, so, I often wonder, but before we dive deeper into that stuff, let's have you introduce yourself to the audience and tell them about yourself and where you're representing yourself now.
Okay. Well, for some of your audience is going to know me very well. My name is James McClure, recently retired Chief Master Sergeant, retired in 1 December of last year. Spent 30 years in the Air Force. Started out as a services troop. Pretty much worked most of my early career in the services. Dining facility, missile field, lodging, then mortuary and readiness. And then in 2001, I decided to complicate my life and I became a military training instructor.
Oh,
I was MTI from 01 to 05. Loved it so much. Came back to the career force for a year. Then went back to being MTI from 06 to 11. And came back to FSS. I didn't know what FSS was when I came back at 11. And then at Barksdale, then made chief and then went to Beale. And I was the chief at Beale for a little bit. And the Chiefs group, as you very well know, KJ, Chiefs group decided to give me the opportunity of a lifetime. I didn't know it at the time. And they sent me to Ramstein to be the 786 FSS superintendent. And then I finished my career out up at A1, up at Headquarters Youth Safety Staff. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Who replaced you? Who placed you up there? Was it did Jennifer or no?
No, Jen, Marcus Holder replaced me.
That's right. Marcus did. He came out of assignments and went up there. Good dude.
Very good dude.
Yeah, man. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for taking time. We know you got a full plate out there on the East Coast besides all that damn snow. And you're doing the husband thing, which, we all know the real chiefs of the house are the wives.
I don't have no power in this house.
Nah, I don't either. I pick my battles, and even the ones I pick, I tend to lose. My wife has a saying, you can be right or you can be happy. And usually that means I'm wrong and I'm unhappy. Well,
your wife has almost the same thing as mine is, but mine is you can be right or you can be homeless.
Oh, well, you don't want to be homeless right now based on the pictures I saw on Facebook.
No, we got a pretty good bit of snow on the ground. It's a lot of snow, but I'm loving it. Like I put in my Facebook post last night, is if you'd have told me 30 years ago that I was going to be retiring in New Hampshire, I probably couldn't have even found it on a map.
Yeah.
Little Southern boy like me, there's no way I'd have thought I'd be up here with all this snow, but I love it here. It's absolutely beautiful.
Man, that is awesome. Well, shoot, man, you have a lot, and I would tell you that, when I retired, I was just over 28 years. And I think it was the right time for me. I always said I would probably do 30. And like you, we got a lot of time out in the sand. And you mentioned the Chiefs group. I will say this, bless their hearts. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm not moving again. I said, I just got custody of my kids. I said, I take care of my parents. I said, I got all these damn deployments. You moved me 4 times in the last 5 years. And I was like, and now you're telling me I'm being, told I'm vulnerable for a long tour overseas at like almost 26 years of service. I was like, that literally has me finishing up my career somewhere where I can't start networking for a life outside of the Air Force. And, yeah, long story short, they were like, it is what it is. And it sounds like you're not all in. And, I won't go back over how that conversation went. But I said, okay. Anyways, brother, man, I very much appreciate your time and connecting as a long time services bro. One of the few people I've seen who got more fruit salad on that chest with all them decorations hanging from your shoulder down to your damn ankles. But I'm going to tell you, I think there's a lot of gold that guys like us can offer, not just to our services career field. And we can get into that definitely because, boy, I'm going to tell you, I can tell you that I got some stories that also led to my segue. I didn't even think I was going to cover it, that, I was kind of a little fired up and upset about, what's the word? The inconsistencies with how our tier management was working as chiefs.
Well, and that's funny, and I have to always preface this because I am still a government employee. My opinions are my own and not representative of the Department of the Air Force or the Department of Defense. But, I didn't really understand how the management piece of that worked, that senior tier, until I moved to staff. And, I was always one of those guys that said, I want to stay at the squadron level. I want to be at the squadron level.
Yeah.
But when the opportunity presented itself back in late 2017 for me to go up to staff, I said, you know what? Let me go up there and see what's what.
Yeah.
Let me go up there and let me see it from that 50,000 foot view that I'm always hearing about.
Yeah.
And I did see that. I did see that because I saw how from a strategic level of how those decisions are made. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, sometimes
right.
There's always a human factor in there. We mentioned the Chiefs group and actually sitting in the EDTs and actually getting to listen to them, I started to appreciate a little bit more of their position. Now, I can only speak for mine. I had been at Bill 12 months. Literally, funny story, we had taken an Alaskan cruise and we had just gotten back off the boat and we're walking around Pike's Market there in Seattle and watching the flying fish and everything. Well, stupid me, I brought the work phone with me. So I saw that I had an email. So I clicked on the email and it said, congratulations on your upcoming assignment.
I love it.
I said, oh, what? My upcoming what? And my wife is sitting there with my daughter and she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, you might want to come over here and read this.
We
that
leaving.
was my assignment to Germany. And so it was a blessing in disguise, but
right.
It damn sure wasn't a blessing in disguise that day because I sure took a lot of heat for that one.
Well, and so, but you see, this is the big piece though, because you were the squadron super at Beale, right? So yes. That's not the part that like I said, I had beef with. I had a beef with being told I had to progressively climb through the tier ladder, and then you had chief selects go right from a flight to the MAGCOM level. So this is right. So that's just the part. I'm not hating on the people who did it at all. It is what it is. It's the inconsistencies that I'm like, I didn't get punched in the face this much to be bullshitted. Just be straight up,
No.
And so that's the part that threw me off is just was like, yeah, you know what, I'm done, because I'm sure it somehow crept up in those little worlds there. Like, man, like we love KJ, but that motherfucker he's not a happy camper, and it'll go to like where, we're in Vegas. I mean, I'm literally in the mecca of hospitality management.
Right.
And I said, I ain't losing nobody to, I ain't got no retention issues losing people to these jobs being offered on the strip. I said, stop using our people as cheap labor. Anyways, that's
always going to be a stick in my craw, because as a squadron superintendent, and using my people for cheap labor, or okay, just because I'm running an FSS, you want to send your people over to me for extra duty. No, that shit ain't happening.
Right.
Because you're not telling my people that their jobs can be done by anybody. I'm not going to let that shit happen.
And that's the contrast that I think it's a fair argument for me to say, like, if you've never done your time in the squadron as a super, how can you effectively lead at that level? And it doesn't make sense. And that just puts a disconnect there, because we will never be able to empathize.
No, it definitely sets someone back if they've never. I'm not saying they can't do it, because I know a lot of great chiefs that they made chief and then they went to those. They're great. They're great.
Absolutely.
But you do miss something about not getting that squadron level piece in there. I mean, right. I did it 3 times. I did it at Barstow, I did it at Bill, I did it at Ramstein. And you miss something if you don't get that superintendent piece in there.
Well, and we have a fucking letter that's thrown in our face by our CFM.
Oh, yeah.
That says, when I say, hey, I'm trying to, by the way, I tried to get to Beal because, my family was in Sacramento.
No, Roger.
You know what I mean?
I talked to your brother, Gary James, pretty much on a daily basis.
Do you talk to Gary?
I talk to Gary I text Gary almost daily.
Well, Gary go way back. You tell that asshole. So do we, right? And I mean asshole like how we're bros asshole. Like, he has a Kicking It with KJ shirt his ass better put on and damn represent. Because I mailed that shit to him. And he wants to call me out, talking about, where's my shirt?
Well, he's gonna be your way in a couple of weeks, I think. So I got to send him a package too. I've been procrastinating. I'm late on it, so he's pissed off at me about that. Not pissed off at me, but
where'd you meet Gary at?
Malmstrom.
Okay, me and Gary we were at Beal together.
Oh, okay.
He was at Readiness, and I was at Contrails.
Oh wow, yeah. We Mr. Jim Buck, who is now the deputy there. Great. Jim's a great guy. He really is, and he mentored me a lot about how, because how Beal is. It's like every other place. Every place is different.
Yeah,
I've heard that for 31 years. This is Beal, or this is Barksdale, or this is Malmstrom, or this is Lackland. Things are different here. Well, every place is different. So, but yeah, I talked to Gary. I'll text him as soon as we get off the phone. I'll text him and say, KJ told you put that damn shirt on.
Yeah, you tell him that, man. I'm gonna text him too and say, me and James talked, and you need to put that shirt on. But hey, so let's get into some meat and potatoes of some stuff, man. That I think
what you got, brother?
That I think is really important. Besides the fact that they're like, oh, here's KJ whining again, and absolutely he's not whining, at least from my lens. But it's definitely something that I think needs to be communicated at what I think bothers the force, And I go into the Airman NCO Senior NCO page all the time and read through it. It's much easier when you're retired, and not a DOD. Department of Air Force civilian, which I'm not. But there's things that I see, and it always goes back to one word that is what I was talking about: inconsistencies. And so I wanted to talk about a few things with you, because you got 30 years under your belt. That's no easy feat. Let's just be honest. And you went from retired chief right back in to being a Department of Air Force civilian. I mean, you love airmen.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of the lessons you learned along the way, besides the fact that you said, I have what'd you say? You went into the MTI world, which, oh, by the way, that was the one thing I never did that I wanted to when I was in the Air Force. I always wanted to be an MTI, and I never did. I ended up going to be a social worker. God bless my heart. I don't know how that happened. But What do you think, what benefits some of these airmen to understand, the lessons that you learned, and like you went right back in to help them. So your passion is airmen, period. I connect with airmen through this, but what would you say were the lessons you learned along your 30-year journey, family, career, you name it. The stage is yours, my friend.
All right, brother. Well, you just said it. The first thing is family. And, I had a chief tell me one time, if the front row at your retirement ceremony is empty, you could have been the greatest airman in the world, but you failed as a human being. And I learned some really hard lessons about that. I won't go into specifics, but for a long time, I didn't put them first. I'll be bluntly honest with that. I didn't put my family first.
Right.
My life was the 331st Training Squadron.
Right.
That was my life. And as an NCI, back then, you worked an ungodly amount of hours. But I would catch myself in the squadron when I didn't need to be there. But I didn't realize that there was a dumpster fire going on in my house.
Yeah.
So that's lesson number one. Take care of your family. Put your family first, which I do that now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am blessed to be sitting here in New Hampshire, but my family comes first with me always. And even when I got remarried again and we had my youngest child, I swore that I would never, ever put anything above them again. So that's lesson number one.
Yeah.
Lesson number two is that, and this is just Jimmy McClure's country opinion. Lesson number two is get over yourself. For a long time, Jimmy McClure thought that Jimmy McClure was the world revolved around him, whether it be senior airman, staff sergeant, tech sergeant, master. He thought that, the Air Force, yeah, you're there to serve, but you know what? I'm taking myself a little bit too seriously here, because in the grand scheme of things, and there's something on Facebook that I saw was you're killing yourself for a job, and your job application or your job vacancy will be posted before your obituary.
Yeah. Wow. That's.
So don't take yourself so damn serious. Number three is understand what you're doing. And, we're career services. We've been kicked and beaten, like a lot of other career fields, but ours tends to, the running joke used to be that, if there's a job you don't want to do, services will do it for you. That used to piss me off a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but understand where you fit at in that picture. There's a reason why you're working that grill. There's a reason why you're in that fitness center. There's a reason why you're behind that desk at lodging, or used to be behind the desk at lodging.
Right.
There's a reason why we train on readiness. There's a reason why we put such a high focus on readiness, which is one of the reasons why I'm glad I got this job, was the years I did spend in readiness helped prepare me for this job. And the last thing I think is have some damn fun. You remember the days, and you think back to it, we would be in the dining facility and you're working 12s but you got the music blaring and you and your coworkers, you're cutting up. I didn't realize how much fun that was when I was actually doing it.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of camaraderie. It was a lot of talking smack. Like Gary, we're talking about Gary. Me and Gary talk smack about football all the time. He's just lucky that his Buffalo Bills finally have a chance at something.
Well, it's funny you said that. So I want to, you said fun. And it was weird because me and my wife were talking, and, so I ran, I'm Air Force Wounded Warrior, got PTSD. I did mortuary affairs in Iraq, casualty collection, and it just compounded interest as I got deployed many, many, many times.
Right.
And I was telling my wife, we were walking, And because everything that your core values are, I agree with, you know what I mean? I mean, most of us, we put the mission first, which is, you know, my retirement speech. I said, I really wish they would change service before self. And you'll have 1,000 different perspectives on that one. I said, some of us take that to heart. And I said, I did. Anytime they needed someone to deploy, I raised my hand, even if I knew I'd miss Christmas or a birthday again. And you know, the thing is, you know, I want to go back to your comment though about having fun, and where like I told my wife, I said, I don't even know if I have fun anymore. And it was because we're in the holiday season. Right. And, I said, I wonder sometimes and this is because, and I ask this because, we're more, seasoned gentlemen, aged gentlemen.
We old, brother. Let's just go ahead and call it like it is.
Right. So, you know, when we came up, you know, we had buildings to manage our Sims systems, and we had typewriters.
Oh Lord.
Right. And today I told my wife, I said, you know, it's funny. I said, I don't have fun no more. I wonder, because I have instant gratification in my hands all the time with a cell phone. That's a computer. And then you know, and like our kids, you know, there's nothing to look forward to. And I was like, man, at Christmas, I used to count down the days and it used to be slower. I was just telling you this before we, you know, like where, you know, I had the interviews that canceled out and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, I got to slow down. And I find that weird because you literally watched a whole pendulum swing in your career, but you're going back into it now, where I'm watching, you know, like the AC doesn't matter no more. Right. And I'll be honest with you, like I was torn. I never thought the AC mattered. I was just more upset, like, oh, you got rid of it now that I don't got to like starve myself during the freaking holidays. You know, I was like, okay, that's a typical story for me. Murphy was always with me most of my career.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I watched the new, you know, I watched these pages, these social media pages, even some of our brothers in like the Chiefs pages. I watched their behaviors and stuff like that. And I'm not saying I'm not culpable to some of it, but I watched the thrashings, and I had made a comment in the leaderish group that we're both in, and was like, I feel like when we consistently change our leaders and they get to base priorities based on what they prefer, sometimes that creates this discord with our younger folks. Remember, and you were talking about that 50,000 foot elevation, and I was talking about that lens at the squadron level. How have you seen that full circle? Because you went from active to chief at the MatchCom level down to you're at Hanscom, right? Can I say that? Well, shit, I already said it, right? And now you're back as, you know, and you're probably looked at differently than the average training manager because of your experience, but now you have these young folks. Like, how have you seen that evolve through your time?
You know, it's weird, brother, because, you know, I'm not the typical training manager because I just concentrate on the experientiary skill set, and which is what I love to do. I mean,
right.
I basically went from doing what I did at the MatchCom, and now I'm doing it at the wing level. And I try really hard not to say, hey, I'm a 30-year retired chief and I know all of this. I mean, sometimes my ego gets the better of me, and it does come out. I'm not going to lie. I'm a human being. The pendulum has swung. When I first came in the Air Force in 1989, you know, we were 500,000 people strong. You know, I mean, you go into a services squadron, you'd be at 100%, over 100% land. Now, you and me have never seen that shit in the last 25 years.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, Saddam decides to diddy bop his ass up into Kuwait, and the whole world changed. And that's where the pendulum started to swing. Because we didn't know. We were, okay, what? We go to the field like what? Once every 6 months, ORI, put the shit on, and then call it a day. Well, now, and you've deployed more than me. You've seen more shit than me. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But, you know, we were putting priorities on the mission, getting the shit done, being ready, combat capable airmen.
Right.
Somewhere around, I want to say the late 90s, we started to concentrate on some shit, in my opinion, that we just, it was important, but we started to value it over other things. I mean, yes, the whole airman concept, it needs to be there. I have been a proponent of that my entire career. It needs to be there. But it is a small piece of what we do.
Right.
To make the airman. We should be concentrating on the mission. So somewhere around the mid-90s, or mid to late 90s, we started concentrating on shit that just, in my opinion, we didn't need to concentrate on. Then all of a sudden, even though we're still in continuous combat operations in the Middle East, but we're only doing the little 90-day hop and pops.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened. Iraq happened. So we started putting, okay, all this other shit don't matter no more. Now we need to be combat capable. Right. But that stuff has ground on us so much. Now some of that some of that other stuff started to creep back in. And then K. Wright came in. And I think Chief Wright put us back on the path to where we need to be, is here's what our focus needs to be. And I think Chief Bass will do a great job at it as well. Yeah, so that's kind of how the pendulum has swung a little bit. Right. But, we go back to that family piece. I put my wedding on hold so I could deploy as an MTI to Iraq.
Mm. And you was already, as an MTI, you were already barely home.
So I put my wedding on hold just so I could take that deployment. And if you don't think 13 years later that I don't still hear about that,
well, guess what? That's why your option, see, my options is I can be right or happy. That's why your options is be right or homeless. See, you took it to another level with that. So, bruh, good on you, because I'm going to tell you what, there was times I volunteered for shit and I was like, hey, you can't say I volunteered for this. I did that when, so I got back from IUD and went to my R&R, came out of the 8 Charlie career field back to 3M. And my first day back, they were like, hey, are you willing to do this jet tasking? And they were like, the good news is that by the time you get in theater, the 1 year, dwell time back in the States is gone, because I had to go do 30 days plus of CST. Right. And of course, with zero hesitation, I'm like, yeah, sure, plug me in, And so I was like, but you can't tell nobody I just said that. Like, and the game was, I just, I tended, and I think you probably are cut from the same cloth. I don't like people telling me what to do. So I just said yes before it was going to happen. It was inevitable. It was going to happen anyways. And I used to tell people that. I'd be like, why say no? I said, listen, if you don't like to be told what to do, either do I. So I just get shit done before they tell me. And right. And I told another person, this young airman that interviewed me he was in ALS, and I said, we always have these conversations about leadership and followership and bosses that they don't necessarily align with. And I said, I always just outperform my boss. And I said, but I had no problem giving him the credit. And I said, that wasn't like my whole career. What I'm saying is, if I had that boss that I was having those issues connecting with, I think I only had one boss out there that like I really pushed my luck with that. I was very blessed, because I like to work hard. I like, remember the fun part? I remember turning up AFN and just throwing down in the kitchen, and I loved it. And I had one boss.
Well, your last boss is one of the best officers I ever worked with.
Which Droney?
Major Droney. She is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. She knows the teddy bear version of me. She actually sometimes she had asked me a question one time, and I just, like, my eyes welled up. And I'm sure for most, they're like, this big bitch, like, and I said, but we're people too. And I think that was a part that maybe like helped with our relationship, because she's like, okay, this guy is not just thick skinned. Right. And yeah, phenomenal boss. And damn, you got me all emotional. I forgot where I was going with this point.
She was my next door neighbor because when we were stationed at Bill, we lived in Lake Wildwood up in Penn Valley, and she was my boss. She was my next door neighbor as well as being our OPSO at the time.
Yeah, you know what? I think I just missed you because I went to ACCIG, and because my family was in Sacramento, I always went to Beale to inspect Beale. But she, I think, was deployed when I went there. So the one boss that I pushed it with was, John Dompierre?
Nuh-uh.
All right, so John was my boss, and he was tech sergeant, and I was I was in A1C. We were working Panama shifts, which are, that's the best shift in the world. Like, I'll do Panama.
That's the best shift of my career.
Yeah. And so he was looking for someone to volunteer to organize the storage closet where all our to-go trays and napkins. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And his guidance was, so this is little dumbass Kevin James. His guidance was, I don't care if you're off or not. If it's your turn to clean it, you got to clean it, and everybody's going to be part of this, right? Sounds like good guidance, right? And by the way, this is a tech sergeant. So remember what you said about tech sergeants? So I make the schedule, and I bring it to him. And it was all great until he saw his name on it. Right? He's the defect manager. And he's like, yeah, he's like, go ahead and take my name off of there because I'm not doing it. I was like, but you said everybody. He's like, I don't got time for that. I said, you said people got days off and they can do it on their days off. And oh my goodness, it worked out okay for me because there was a inbound mass sergeant who was like, Airman James, go away. I was arguing to the end. So I love Dompierre, great guy. I think that was my one time I really just tried to push it. And there was a guy named Chief Hubbard and Chief Cusenberry. These are some old hats in our career field.
I know Chief Q.
Okay, so Chief.
I remember Chief Q.
Okay, so I don't know if you also knew Chief Huntoon.
I know of him. I did not know him, but I knew of him. I think I met him once or twice.
So my dad is a retired service superintendent. So these guys knew me as a kid, dependent.
Oh, wow.
And so it probably is what saved my career because Ramstein, I will always say, is the years from 93 to 97. I should have been kicked out. So that was the one time that I pushed it. But I pulled something up, and I want to see how this goes because you brought up something. So let's see. Let me hit this play and see if it takes you back somewhere. Let's see if we can hear it. Can you hear it?
Yeah, sounds like me.
Yeah.
That's me.
So I figured...
Actually, that's not me. That's not me, but I know who that is.
Do you?
Yeah.
So I thought I'd play that for you, right? To take you back down the memory lane to where you decided to opt out of the wedding for a deployment out of MTI duty, but I never got to do it. So let's talk about BMT and how it changed from the time you were in MTI versus being the trainee.
Well, I didn't opt out of being an MTI to take that deployment. I deployed as an MTI to set up the Iraqi Air Force basic training.
No, I meant you opted out of the wedding. I
opted out of the wedding. I opted out of my house.
Yes. So I'm not trying to rip open no wounds, because
no, it's all good. It's all good. I got a beautiful wife, and that was 13 years ago, but she does like to remind me of it. But, when you're a trainee, first of all, BNT was a lot harder when I first became an NTI than it was when I was basic training going through.
Right.
It was. I always say NTIS, Military Training Instructor School, I break my career down in 3 phases, 10 years for each. The first 10 years, I was a services troop. The second 10 years, I was an NTI. And then the last 10 years was kind of my senior NCO life. And I came in the late 80s, basic training was attention to detail, which it still is to this day. And a shout out to my brother and sister in TIs because they're still doing the job and they're still on the gas and kicking ass. So shout out to them because they're phenomenal. But it was attention to detail, 6 weeks, you're gone. So when I became an NTI in 2001, we started concentrating on the expeditionary skills, the war skills, which I was down for. I mean, I took a lot of heat from it because I was a services troop, but I didn't take a lot of heat when it came to showing somebody how to set up a temper tent because I could do that shit with my eyes closed. But it was a lot more focused on the war skills piece of it, a lot more. And then when General Dunbar came in as the group commander, she put her foot on, I love that lady to death. And she put our focus on NTI responsibilities, physical performance, physical discipline, or not that physical training, not physical discipline. And she made us focus. When I came back in 06 is when it really started to ramp up. But the BMT that I left in 05, I didn't recognize when I came back in 06 because we were ramping up for the 8.5 week schedule. A lot of it was still the same. The dorm was still the same. Drill was still the same, but there was a lot of, we started bringing the trainer weapons in. We started getting the beast experience prepared. And I will say this, and I hear this all the time, is, well, these airmen today. No. I saw every airman that came through the gate, almost every airman that came through or thousands of airmen that came through the gate of Lackland Air Force Base between 01 to 11. And there was no difference between an 18-year-old coming in, even today, other than they're a hell of a lot smarter.
Yeah.
But there's no difference between that 18-year-old kid coming in today than 18-year-old Jimmy McClure coming in 1989. There's no difference. You're still an 18-year-old kid that needs mentoring, guiding, and developing.
Yeah.
I want to come back.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I was talking to someone about this and you see it all the time. Like I said, I go back to that Facebook page and I said, they're probably they're all the same. We're all the same. I said, they just have more leverage with social media and technology today versus when we had it.
No shit. Can you imagine if we would have had Facebook back when we were airmen?
No, I would have never made chief. I'm glad we did.
We would have made it 4 years, and you know that.
that's a fair assessment. But I think that they have the platform, but they also they want to question. I don't want to say they want to question your authority as much as they want to question your perspective, which I can understand why that can be annoying, but I can also understand why they want to know, because they will go to a platform and see 50 different answers, sometimes from our brothers and sisters there's Ask a Virtual Chief, and I'm like, look.
If you go back, you go back to that Facebook page, the ever famous Facebook page, I could sit here and say that I can get mad at it. But just like you, I look at it from a different lens now that I'm a civilian and retired, because sometimes I go back to, you got to get over your. I have to. Sometimes you got to get over your own ego, and you got to
go
beyond how it's being said and listen to what's being said. These kids have some grievances. They have some honest to God questions that they need to know. Airmen going in 4 years in our career field, most of them, or even in our brothers and sisters that are in the A1 community, by the time they hit 4 years, they've already got 2 or 3 6-month deployments. We never had that shit.
Yeah.
They come back. They go to Iraq, Afghanistan, or LUD, and LUD's a deployment.
It is.
You can send me to the most remote part in the middle of Iraq before you ever send me back to LUD, but it's a deployment.
I'm just messing with you. It is.
But I mean, it's and we have to. My favorite saying used to be, is The minute that Chief McClure forgets what it was like to be Airman McClure is the minute I'm not fit to be Chief McClure.
Yeah, I've went back and looked at your pictures. I was like, he would have been a scary guy to cross.
But I'm not going to sit here and say I was a great chief. I'm not even going to sit here and say, because I'm going to guarantee you there's some people that are probably going to listen to this podcast and go, Jimmy McClure's full of shit. I hate that guy. Whether I'm a chief or an E9, that's not my grade. That's my airman's grade. I hope I did the best to help them or guide them and mentor them. Sometimes was I too hard on them? Reflecting back, yeah, I think maybe in a lot of ways I was.
I think that if everybody, so we could deviate off to another perspective. You know, when I created Leaderish, I created deliberately with the intent to grow and force myself to stay positive. I don't know if you know that. When I created, that was the intent. I was like, my rule for myself is I have to stay positive because I had a lot of perspective that could be skewed and looked at as negative. But I dealt with that when I transitioned a little bit. I was like, towards the end of my years too, I was like, who's moving up the ranks? And I was like, seems like a whole lot of cheerleading. But that's just from my lens. But how do you, and I was like, how do I communicate that without sounding like I'm trying to offend someone? But I said, if everybody liked you, then you probably were not an honest broker of being who you or what you represent. So, brother, I think you'll find though, like what I made a post. I said, 0 in public, hero in private. The DM. I get plenty of DMs from folks that won't even acknowledge the stuff that we put out there, right? That's what you do as a chief. You doing this podcast, you're putting gold out there to be mined. But nobody wants to pick up the pickaxe and mine it.
Well, no, the information is always going to be out there. And maybe I failed as a chief. I didn't put a lot of. Every once in a while, I would put out my perspective on leadership, but for the most part, I try to stay humble and I try to stay grounded. I'm like, people don't want to hear what Jimmy McClure's got to say in a Facebook post.
Yeah,
They
do.
What they want to hear is what he's going to do for me in the squadron.
Well, yeah,
that's what they want to hear.
I see what you're saying.
What am I doing for them in the squadron? And sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, KJ, sometimes I think I probably failed. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything I did as a chief was 100% on point. No, there were a lot of decisions that I made that I look back on them now. I'm like, Jimmy, you were freaking stupid. But we go back to those lessons you were talking about. I'd like to add one more: self-reflection.
Yeah.
Know your weaknesses. I'm old, I'm short-tempered, and I'm stubborn. And sometimes I think my way is the only way of doing business. And that's wrong. But I have to acknowledge that.
But if that's who you were and who you are, and you acknowledge it and you're working on it, sometimes you can acknowledge it and work on it and it's not going away. I mean, look at my stomach. I mean, I work on it and I acknowledge it. It ain't going nowhere, right? But when it comes to hold my son, boy, I'm glad I got it, because when my arms get tired, I just rest them on my stomach. So, no.
And if people were to see pictures of me right now, I went from running, and I love Brian Denny. His conditioning with Chief is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And Brian's a good friend of mine, and what he's doing with that is just outstanding. And I've been here 3 months, and I went from running 50 miles a month to I haven't ran in about 2 months. So I get the whole stomach piece of it. People would see pictures of me right now and be like, "That's Jimmy."
Well, someone just sent me in my DM a picture of me in PSAB in 1999 in my little wife beater tank top, and I was like, "Thanks for the reminder of why I can't wear these no more." But it's always fun to pull it out and be like, "Look, babe, look."
Yeah, there's a picture of me and Nyron Alexander. I've got it on my laptop that I look at it when we were young airmen at Escon Village in 1991, and I'm like, "Oh, holy shit! Did I ever have that much hair, and was I ever that skinny?"
Yeah, I've looked at it. So that's kind of how I'll stalk people's Facebook pages before a little more in depth and deliberately before I interview them, just to make sure I catch some stuff. which, you know, something stood out to me that you posted that looked very significant to you. So we pick up a lot of significant stuff personally and professionally throughout our careers. And you obviously, if I could see your Love Me wall,
Absolutely.
I have what's called Love Me bins right now because all my stuff's in a bin in the garage. I just haven't gotten to a point where, or a place where I can hang it up. And my wife's like, you can put your shadow box up and that's it. So favorite office item. I wrote this down. And what it looked like was you have like this family. It's like this passed on through your family. It looks like a diary. Cause I have like this little book that I write all my leadership in from all my PD. And I want to know if you would talk about that. And it looked like it was passed on from like your dad or a family member. I think the name I saw in there was a name Billy inside of it.
That would be my aunt.
Okay.
That would be my aunt.
So you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you mind talking about that? Because it stood out to me.
No, that was a Bible that was December 25th of 1990. And it was the first Christmas that I had ever been away from home. It was, you know, I never left the little small town I grew up in, and it was my first Christmas in the military. And my aunt, which is my mom's sister, we were really close, and she gave that to me as a Christmas present. And I've kept it. I've kept it in my dorm room. I keep it in my office. To believe it or not, as many times as I've moved, or as many times as I've moved offices, I know where that Bible is. I can't tell you where a piece of important Air Force paperwork is, but I can tell you where that Bible is at all times.
Man,
there's there's a second Bible that was my family's Bible that my grandmother, my dad's mom had. I can't tell you where any other important pieces are, but I know where that Bible is at all times.
Wow.
And not necessarily because I'm an overly religious person. It's just the sentimental value that those items have.
No, and I like that because I'm going to tell you, like in 1992, my very first base, I recall, so remember for us guys, we used to have to go to the mailbox. That was the big thing. Like we go to our mailbox and it's like letter K and number 1 or whatever, you know, the little thing. And I remember breaking down crying. My first assignment, I was 17. And I think it's awesome that you carried this piece with you through life. Like it's very, very significant to you. And I'm sure the folks out there can relate to something, but the fact that I'm looking at December 25, 1990 and November 26th of this year, right? I mean, this is 30 years. Actually, had you posted it a month and a day later, you would have been like 30 years on the dot. I think that's phenomenal. And do you ever talk to Aunt Billy?
Well, like she passed on. Aunt Billy passed in 2013.
Okay.
We actually, and it's going to sound a little weird. We have our family is Aunt Billy is my mom's sister, but her husband was my dad's brother. Like my mom and dad met at their wedding.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. So, and so we were always my four cousins on that side, and me and my two brothers. We were always very, very close to them. And Aunt Billy only had girls. So, and my mom only had boys, which I don't know how. I love my mama to death. I don't know how she put up with the 3 hardheads she raised. And but I was always close with my Aunt Billy, and another aunt on my mom's side I'm very close to as well. And Aunt Billy was just, and she was also trying to, I guess maybe at that point in my life, give me some guidance and some direction, and just to let me know that she was thinking of me. I got that, just like you were talking about, Airmen living in the dorms. That's what we did. We went and checked our mailbox, and that came in the mail to me, and it's been very special, and I keep it with me. And like I said, I may not know where a lot of things are in this house, but I know where that Bible is at all times.
Man, I appreciate that. That is awesome for sharing that. I wrote it down. It's weird. I was going through it and it stood out. I'm a very sentimental guy. Actually, my wife is, so my wife is not with a lot of stuff. And so I'm far from a hoarder, but to her, I'm a hoarder. And, when you start doing contrast, but I appreciate you sharing that because it's sentimental to you. So something I wanted to cover on was a message that you had sent me. And I think I want to express my appreciation for you because it's the only interview that I did that I had a little bit of anxiety. And I'm going with the Geraldine Lovely interview that I did. And I appreciated it because I had a lot of thoughts, right? So you as a chief, you as a leader, you as a man, you as a husband, right? Most times leaders don't even know if they're actually successful at leading, right? I mean, I know I went through a professional development, and one of the things that I wrote down was problem with leadership is we don't know if we're succeeding or failing for the most part. But I think instinctively we all know when someone probably needs that. I think what you did was right. So you shot me a message showing appreciation, but you not just shot me a message in private, you did it in public. And I want to express how much I appreciated that because it took me down another path of like, man, how come no one, like those who had to do it privately, I wondered why it had to be private. Because we as leaders know the intent of, well, not the intent. We know as leaders that some of the biggest lessons we learned were through our failures. And we also know as leaders, It's about picking people back up and helping them. And I'm like, good, bad, or indifferent, we need to celebrate this stuff a little more, especially when I start seeing, I see folks who are very, very active on Facebook who say they're all about, these things. But what was it about, that caught your attention or that you could connect with as a chief and leader, especially because, I was her chief and I can tell you, man, that was not a fun time. But, what drove me to it was years later. I was like, man, you're still like really suffering from this, it's impacted your family, it's impacted your life. I would go feed a homeless vet in my community, not knowing their history. And if I have an opportunity to share people's story, why wouldn't I? And I'm just curious on your thoughts, if you're willing to share, like while we're doing this interview, what you got out of that, besides what I was trying to communicate and do for her.
Well, what I got out of it was I love redemption stories. I love the underdog. I love it when someone makes a huge mistake. And let's not, and let me preface this, what she did was wrong. Completely
Absolutely.
And totally.
Absolutely.
But let's take that away from it. What she did was completely wrong. And, there were a lot of chiefs out there, and I'm going to tell you right now, KJ, myself included, nail her to the wall. But is it a life sentence? And I have been able to handle that situation as well as I think you did. Because you handled it not only with a firm hand, but you handled it with compassion. And, it's like we talked about on the phone, and it's like we talked about it when you called me last week. And then, like I said, I don't think I could have handled it that well. Because not only were you having to deal with a young lady that was obviously in a lot of trouble, but you're having to deal with the microscope of how you're going to handle it.
Right.
And having everybody out there in the United States Air Force second guessing your and your boss's decision and how you were going to handle that at the time.
Yeah.
And I think you handled it great.
Yeah, we had my boss at the time was awesome. He handled it really well.
And so, and then like, is it a life sentence? Absolutely not. And I was just like what another one of our chiefs had posted on that post. You could hear it in her voice how sorry she was. So when do we stop caring about the individual and still condemning the crime?
Yeah.
You condemn the crime. Got it. It's done. It's over with. You've paid your retribution. Then let's wish her well and let's help build back up and not tear back down. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, because you'll find that, like, even in that interview and some of the other ones I do, I'll be like, when I joined and when you joined, and what you did as an MTI, as a chief, as a leader, I said, I wanted to be something that was bigger than Kevin James.
Right.
And remember I said Ramstein was the years I should have been kicked out. And what if social media existed? And so my lens is different, because I'm like, half the shit, I did, it wasn't publicized. It hadn't gone viral. And some of my friends, who are at our stage, I'm like, really? You know what I mean? Like, and so, I told someone, I said, you will never see KJ invite a pedophile, a murderer, but even we have programs in the States, that rehabilitate and try to put criminals back out on the streets with training, and, they did their time and stuff like that. And that's what it boiled down to. I said, look, this isn't about, your side of the story to validate what you did. And I think I was pretty clear in the interview. I said, look, I don't subscribe to what you did. I was there, when we had to do what it took to get her out. I was like, but you don't deserve a life sentence.
No, and as a matter of fact, you said that when that whole thing came out, I remember going into my boss's office at the time and says, I'm glad I'm not Kevin James right now. Those were my exact words. I said, I am so glad I am not Kevin James right now.
Yeah, I had like a jillion messages. Like the first one, I'll leave nameless. It was a WTF question mark from a command chief. And then it like avalanched. And I was like, and I remember seeing the link, and I clicked it, and my heart just, I just had to sit down, and it is what it is. But, brother, man, like, that's history. Well, shit, nothing's history anymore in today's world. It's always going to be out there.
No, this shit's there forever.
And all I can say is it is nice to know that there is a chief like you, a gentleman like you, who has made decisions in life that were not perfect. You're human. You come out like I do. I spent the later part of my years telling my folks that, like, look, like, if you're looking for the chief who's always going to have the answers, I don't, because while I can agree with you, and I know you can relate to this, while I can agree with exactly what you're saying right now, in 5 minutes I'm going to go into this commander's call and I'm going to say something that goes the total opposite direction, because it doesn't, you know what I mean? It's what's best for the mission or the overall group.
Right.
And
but we have to hold ourselves accountable, and this was just always my perspective. And whether I delved up to it or not, I can't say. Again, it goes back to that. Are you a chief or an E9? That's not my grade. That's not my grade to give myself.
Right.
But, I'm going to have to sit here, and I always said, and I always try to live up to, I have 3 responsibilities as a squadron chief. You, the airman.
Yep.
That's my first one. Well, it may not seem like it is. Number 2, my boss. Because I have to take care of my commander. Because if I take care of him, he's going to be able to do a better job for you. And number 3, the mission. If I do 1 and 2 right, 3 takes care of itself. But just like you, I said, I'm telling you something right now, but you may hear me say something completely different in about 5 minutes, because the situation changes that fast.
Right.
And I hate Monday morning. I said what I love redemption stories. I hate Monday morning quarterbacking. I wasn't Kevin James in 2016 at Nellis Air Force Base. I was James McClure at Ramstein. I had my own set of problems.
Oh, man. That's
you've been to Ramstein. You know what my problems were.
Oh, man. Let me tell you what. Ramstein. Wow. What a monster that it's a beast. You know what I mean? And yeah.
It is a great place. I loved it. As a matter of fact, we tried to stay in Germany for a little while. We actually did. I stayed there almost 9 months after I retired, just because I was trying to find a job, and we loved it there so much. But I always say that, Ramstein's going to make you or break you.
Yeah.
Ramstein is going to make you or break you, because it is non-stop. stop.
Well, let me tell you a quick story about Kevin James there. So you remember you had the Ramstein Village. This is in 93, 94, so hopefully it's still the same. You had the Ramstein Village gate, and then you had the gate that's over on the side towards Vogelway. Still the same setup?
Yep, you have the East Gate and the West Gate.
All right, so here's young Airman James. Gets to the gate with a German national. I'm like, hey, look, we're just trying to go. We just, because if you couldn't cut through there, you're either on the A6 or you're going up towards Landstuhl and going around that road, that back road that will take you to the Vogelway side. So,
right.
So here I am with the cop at the gate. I don't know what's up with this guy, and I'm like, hey, bro, like we're just trying to cut through. Right. And so these are airman shenanigans, right? So it's good. These airmen hear what we made chief, right? So
right.
He's like, yeah, brother, go ahead. And so I don't know if you knew a Justin Jordan. Justin Jordan ended up becoming an Air Force Wounded Warrior. He wrote a book. So we're driving and we're laughing. We're like, hey, man, look at all those cop cars and sirens and stuff, right? We didn't know what it was about. We get to the other gate. I can't remember if it's east or west, but it's the one that is going towards the roundabout, going towards Vogelway.
That's the East Gate.
Okay, so
the East Gate is the one going out towards Vogelway. Well, you also had the Elvis Gate, which is that's where all the contractors come through at.
Ooh, well, I'll tell you what, we were met with weapons pointing at the car, and we were on our knees with our hands up at that gate, being accused of running the gate with a local national, and oh my goodness! So that's my one story of many of shit that I was caught up with in the Air Force. And so the funny thing was, as we told them our story, we were like, hey, like why? How did we stop at the gate? And right, so I think they said so. Ended up becoming an investigation, and we went out and filled out the statements. I think it's 1168.
Oh, that's it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And we were like, the dude waved us through and said it was okay. I think he just got cold feet, and they were like, well, you're not supposed to do that, right? We were like, of course, but it's a shortcut. I mean, come on, we're airmen, right? We're like, yeah, of course. But we're just trying to get to Vogelway. And anyways, we didn't get in trouble. He actually ended up getting in trouble. Because at the end of the day, it was his role, but it ended with literally no stripes, no NJP with anybody, even him. He had to it ended with him coming to where we worked and apologizing.
But fast forward, imagine if that had happened today and it ended up on Facebook.
Oh man, I would. Hey, well, look, and I mean this with as much love. I mean this with much love and humor, even to Geraldine Lovely. When we talked, I said, look, I need some help. I need to go viral, and at least she laughed about it. I said, I'm trying to build a brand. I was like, I know you know how to go viral. I don't. But brother, man, we're reaching that point where we should do this more often. I think you wanted to. I'm trying to get some more chiefs to maybe join us in here in the studio, and then we can call you and.
I think we should do that on a Friday evening, and we can have a virtual drink.
Yeah, I dig it. But what I always like to do is, if you want to be found, or if you have any words of inspiration for the listeners out there from a cool cat like yourself, and I say cool literally because it's snowing out there, and I think you got some shoveling and some taking care of mama duties coming up. Any last words of inspiration?
I just had to go get my 12-year-old out of the yard because she thought it was fun to go out there and throw snow around. But they say that I had Emma, my youngest. I had her in my late 30s, and they say, and I know you definitely can relate to this. They say that having kids later in life, you got more patience with them. That's a damn lie.
It's hold on. So I'm glad you said that. So check this out. I downloaded this. I hope it's not a copyright infringement. I don't own the rights to it, but you said this, so hold that thought. So you ready to listen to this?
Go ahead, brother.
If anyone tells folks like me and Jimmy that it's easier because we have patience, then this song's for you.
I wonder if he know that I know he's lying right now. Oh, you got the new Margiela?
You heard this one, Jimmy?
That's what's up.
Yeah, I've heard it.
So we'll let it play a little bit, because anyone who tells us that, we know what they're doing. And I hope, if anything, you're bobbing your head a little bit before you give some last words of inspiration to finish your story. Hold up.
Why the fuck you lying?
It's not easier.
It's not.
Oh my God. Stop fucking lying.
All right. It's not easier. I just woke up last night telling my 8-month-old, I was like, go to sleep, London. I'm tired.
I love her to death, and she gave me. We were talking about that, and you asking for final. Emma is my. I said this at my retirement ceremony. She's the light. She gets it from my mama because she sure don't get it from me. But she's kind of my. She was kind of my new lease on life. But she does love to test that. She does love to test that line. She knows she can push those buttons on me better than any human on this earth.
Oh, yes, they do. And you know what? I am sometimes, honestly, I have with London, I've sometimes said, man, you're not cut out to do this dad thing. And he's number 6. And, my 16-year-old just this morning before the interview, because I told you they're flying home, I was like, hey, are your suitcases ready? Because once school's over with, we got to pack you up and roll. And I said, you had to have it packed by yesterday. You know what he says? Yeah,
what?
Okay, I still got to put some stuff in it. And I said, wait, you're not packed up? And he's like, oh, no, I got some stuff to do. I said, I told you to have it packed. He goes, okay. I said, I don't think it's not okay. You don't understand what I'm going with this. And I feel so bad. My wife will tell you that I'm the worst parent because I feel guilty for disciplining him. And I said, you know what, dude? I said, how come every time I say something, it's met with some kind of sarcastic remark? And I said, what I'm worried about is one day someone's going to clean your clock because you're not understanding that it's not always time to be sarcastic. I was like, maybe you watch too many Adam Sandler movies growing up. I don't know. Damn Happy Gilmore, or Billy Madison. And he loves Adam Sandler. So, brother, man, like, it's not easier. And bless our hearts.
No.
So how did she respond when you was like, hey, no, like?
She's just like her daddy. Every bit. She looks like me. She acts like me. She just as stubborn as me. My mama will tell you right now, you were looking at the female version of you.
Okay.
And like remote learning. We're doing the whole remote learning thing here because it was a decision me and my wife made that we're not comfortable with her going to school just yet. Maybe next year when all this shit dies down. And it's hard on her. I got to give her credit though. She's been resilient as hell throughout the whole thing. I mean, she remote learning, doing an overseas move in the middle of a pandemic. We say our military kids are resilient. That Emma is the embodiment of that, of just what she's had to put up with from March of last year to now.
Yeah.
To do remote learning, move overseas, and not complain. Well, she complains a little, but Emma, with this remote learning, you had really got to stay on top of them because kids are kids and they will pour some shady shit on you.
Yes, they will.
I know that because I'm not one of these parents that goes, well, my baby would never do that. No, I'm one of those parents like, yeah, that's my kid. She's more than capable of doing some shady shit like that.
Absolutely. Keeping it real.
But, Emma, I get a note from her teacher. Emma wasn't online on time. I'm like, why weren't you online on time? Sit there and look me dead in my eye and go, I was online. And then you just have to step back and count to 10 and pray to Jesus.
Well, brother, so you know what though? It's funny though because I had one of those moments and come to find out that the school was in the habit of sending bogus messages, like even with missing assignments. And
Yeah, we ran into that, but that wasn't the case this time.
Oh, not that one. Okay.
No, we've had those, but that wasn't the case here because I got to admit she wasn't online on time. She was texting with a friend, and that's another. Her friends are still back in Germany.
Got it.
So when she's supposed to be going to school, her friends are out of school.
Mm.
So they're still all of her friends in Germany. She has not met one kid in the 3 months we've been here because, well, one, it's a pandemic, so we're all pretty much locked up, and so I try to give her a little bit of patience on that. But a kid's a kid, and they will get away with what you let them get away with.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. So, brother, any last parting words of inspiration to the listeners out there, whether they're the Chiefs, whether they're airmen, whether they're the Gary James, put your damn shirt on and take pictures.
I'm gonna text him that just as soon as we get off the phone.
Yeah, the floor is yours, brother.
Brother, I just, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciated it. What you're doing and how you're trying to help people is just, and putting yourself out there is just phenomenal. And I applaud you for that. I really don't consider myself an inspirational person. I consider myself a guy who is just trying to, get it through life. I told my wife the other day that I feel like a car whose warranty is expired because as soon as I retired, I started to have to go to the doctor more than I ever did in the 30 years that I was in. But take care of your family. Take care of yourself. Whether you do 4 or 30, sooner or later, you're going to take that uniform off. Whether it's 4 years or 30 years, sooner or later, you have to take care of your family, take care of yourself. If you do that, you'll be able to take care of the mission. And my hat's off to my brother and sister airmen out there getting the job done daily. I'm glad to be back in the fight with you. I'm honored and blessed to get this opportunity to work with phenomenal folks that I get to work with every day. And that's it. That's all I got, brother, man.
Man, I love it. So listen, y'all. We're going to take this one out with a little bit of different beat. I'm feeling a little pumped up after talking to this gentleman. Big time USAFE leader, James McClure, Chief Retired Training Manager for Expeditionary Skills, the Airman's Airman. Hey, brother, thank you for joining me. And if I didn't say it, because I know I didn't say it, but I'm going to say it now, continue being that lighthouse. Because there's people out there, they may not see that they need you because the seas are calm. But when the seas get rough, I know you'd be there.
All right, brother, man. I appreciate it.